Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Altispeed Technologies, the Ask Noah show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour to be a part of the program. It is a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 1-855-450-6624, or send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Chalaya. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you as another episode of the Ask Noah show kicks off this hour. Joining me, my co-host, Mr. Steve Ovens. Welcome in, sir.
So you know how prices on some things are going way up?
Yes, I am familiar with that trend. It's not good.
No, it's not. But you know what? I found
Dang it, AI.
I found something that kind of surprised me. I'll let you know how it goes. But I found a 5-port PoE managed switch for $22.
Really?
Yeah.
$22?
Yep. So I ordered it because I figured, why the heck not? And it should be here Friday. So I'm looking forward to seeing what this is. I mostly only care about it being managed because I want to see if I can get like SNMP data off of it. But I was looking at, so the quandary that I had is my core switch is full and I was trying to offload some of it. I was looking at it and it's largely full because it's got PoE, a bunch of PoE stuff, like 6 or 7 PoE devices on it. Mm-hmm. And so I started looking at getting those PoE power injectors. And they're like, you can get decent ones for like somewhere between $10 and $20 each. And then I don't know why, but I thought, well, if I also made another switch that is PoE related, then I can just simply shunt all of, like I can basically have a trunk line from my core switch to this other switch and power all of the things off of that. So I'm going to see how that goes.
When does it arrive?
Friday.
Do you have a brand, a model, make anything like that?
I do. It's some random brand, of course, for $22. It's called Steamio.
Okay.
Yeah, right. But it's a 5-port managed switch. That's apparently the it's got the AF certification for the power of the Ethernet. So I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Interesting. So if effectively the goal here is to balance out your PoE load?
Essentially get it off the core switch just because I need more ports. And the only reason those things are on there is because of the PoE, not because they need to be... So the way that I have it set up is almost like a hub and spoke model where the core switch handles like switch number 1 is on this VLAN and switch number 2 is on this VLAN so that none of the downstream clients have to be aware about their packets being tagged. I've got a bunch of devices on the core switch that I'm tagging packets for only because they need PoE. I could easily move them off to one of the spoke switches in terms of ports, as long as I had power going to them. And so that's why it was either get a power injector or get another PoE switch.
Interesting. All right. Well, let us know when it arrives. What you let me ask you. This is kind of a side question, and not to take us too far down that rabbit hole. But I had a discussion with an organization that is they're very concerned about switch hops, and I understand or I recognize there to be some value in limiting switch hops from the standpoint of points of failure, because obviously if I put a signal path through 25 switches, you got 25 different things that can die and break the signal path, whereas if there's only 2, then there's less, right? So I understand it from that perspective, but do you see any downside of, well, I'm out of ports, I'm just going to put another switch and then I'll add more ports on? I mean, to a degree, you could argue that like now there's either one of those fails and it takes you down. The other side of it is though, you still have a single point of failure. Even if you have one big switch, it's just one point of failure.
So there is something to having too many switch hops. However, because I'm doing the hub and spoke model, I'm only putting one hop between the devices and the core switch. So if you were plugged into the core switch, you're now plugged into another switch and there's a hop. I don't chain one switch to another. Like you're never 2 switches removed from the core switch. Does that make sense?
Yes, I believe so.
right? So I limit the number of hops by doing that. If I needed more ports on, let's say, VLAN 25, and that switch is full, I wouldn't daisy chain VLAN 25's switch to another switch. I would open up a new port on the core switch and have that going to a new switch 25.
Sure. Oh, so like a hub and spoke kind of a thing.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Your feedback, always entertained, at 855-450-NOAH. It's 855-450-6624. Send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. Our first email comes in from Randy. Randy writes in and says, "Hi, Noah and Steve. I really appreciate all you do for the community, and I love your podcast. Since you asked for questions, I wanted to submit the situation to you guys. I do not want to have to pay for a domain, but I do want to use DNS and HTTPS in my home lab. As a result, I have my home lab set up using StepCA. Any links to smallstep.com. This allows me to issue certificates to all of my self-hosted applications via standard Acme protocols. To complete the circle, I'd like to use certificates not only for the servers, but also for the home users. For example, I've created a certificate via XCA, and he links to documentation for XCA for myself that allows certain applications to authenticate me without a password. However, I have to renew it every year when it expires. The final piece of this puzzle is that I also run an LDAP server, and he links to OpenLDAP. My dream would be that I could have a StepCA issue personal certificates, then store them in LDAP, and whenever a user logs into a machine on my network, it would download the certificate from LDAP and store them in the browser. That brings me to a few questions. Do you have any experience with running OpenLDAP in Docker? Both Steve and I would say no. Second question, do you have any ideas or resources how to get my personal certificates from an Acme server via an automated process? And do you have any suggestions on the best, most secure way to store a public key infrastructure in LDAP? Alternatively, I assume large organizations have to solve this. So how do they do it if not via LDAP? So let's back up and answer some broader questions. And I was joking in the pre-show. I feel like we could do an entire episode on some of these things. And so if you have an interest in that, live at asknoahshow.com and let us know. But Steve, very broadly speaking, can you tell me what a CA is?
It's a certificate authority that essentially you create a private key that gets put on a specific host, and that host then has the ability to say, yes, I have created this certificate and therefore I know who this computer is. And essentially that CA creates a certificate that you load into your browser or maybe in the PKI store on your computer, and your computer trusts the CA, and therefore anything that the CA issues will be trusted by your computer.
So almost kind of like not a directory is not the right way to put it, but like a verification book that contains all of the known players, so that if I want to know, like, you can generate an SSH key and I can generate an SSH key, but how do I know that the key, the public key that is there is actually Steve's key? And so a CA is kind of like a central repository in where we can store some of those things and reference them.
It's probably more basically, you could say it like this. I need to know, let's say, okay, exact example. My freezer broke a couple of weeks ago. I don't know who to trust in terms of repair people in the area. So I went and talked to a couple of people that I trust. And because they trusted a certain mechanic, well, a certain repair person, I called them. And that's exactly what a CA is. The CA is the person that I called. I trust them. And they said, that person over there, that repair person, is a good person. And because they said I can trust them, I trusted them and I gave them a call. And that's what a CA does. You are explicitly saying, I'm going to trust the CA. If it recommends something to me or tells me that something is good, then you are going to take that recommendation. That's how a CA works. It's exactly like going to somebody you trust and saying, who should I hire for this? What should I buy? How should I fix my LDAP situation?
I like that. That's a really good analogy. Talk to me about the standard Acme protocols. What are Acme protocols?
So Acme protocols are just a generic way of being able to interact via an API to get certificates or other types of information.
So what let's define LDAP. What is an LDAP server? What does that do?
So the LDAP server stands for the lightweight directory. You know what? I don't even remember what the whole thing stands for, but it's a directory service. A directory service very similar to Active Directory for people that know what those are. But it's essentially like a Rolodex of computers and objects that you can go to a place. It's a giant database. Mm-hmm. You go and make a lookup, and you get a result or not, depending on whether that person is enrolled. So most generically speaking, LDAP is usually meant for either computers or people, so that when you go and ask, what is the username, what is the user ID for Steve, it will return that. Or, I have this username called Steve. They've told me their password is this. Is that correct? And the LDAP server handles the centralized authentication.
Yeah, but you had it right. Access protocols, the two last ones, but lightweight directory access protocol, and an interesting little side piece. Well, actually, before we get into the interesting side piece, what is Kerberos?
Kerberos is another ticketing sort of thing that allows you to prove who you are via a password or passkey or other means, and then you are given, it's almost kind of like a cookie. You're given a Kerberos ticket, and that Kerberos ticket is signed for a specific period of time. When you need to access it's usually done in corporations. When you need to access a corporate server, what happens in the background is if your Kerberos ticket exists and is valid, it gets sent to the server on your behalf. So the most common thing is like, okay, you have, let's say you are logging into Gmail. Gmail will issue you a Kerberos ticket of some kind if you're using like your corporate SSA, right? So your corporate sign-on. So I log into Gmail, I get, okay, type in your username and password for your organization. You do that, and when it authenticates, it will give you a Kerberos ticket back if configured. Then if I go to something else that isn't Gmail, but is also controlled by my company's domain, I don't know, Outlook or Lucidcharts or pick a thing, right? That Kerberos ticket, which is now valid, you've been authenticated because Gmail went off and talked to whatever directory service your company is using. Your company said, yep, that person's valid. Here's the Kerberos ticket, and it comes back. That Kerberos ticket then gets automatically passed. If I went to Lucidcharts, which is just a diagramming thing, and my company is enrolled in that, what will happen is the Kerberos ticket will get sent to them, and I automatically get logged in because it's already trusted.
So the thing that I remember, it was actually in a Red Hat class, I believe I learned this. For the longest time, I had always thought that LDAP was this Linux thing, Kerberos was this Linux thing, and Active Directory was the Windows thing. I learned that, I remember there was a light bulb moment in my head where I learned that Active Directory is really just a combination of LDAP and LDAP for doing the directory portion and Kerberos for authentication. And so when you're talking about doing it on the Linux side or on the open source world, it's what open source does well. We take all of these individual pieces and then we put them together. But the nice thing about that is you can enroll machines of really any operating system into these directory services and authenticate.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so now we kind of have a lay of the land. So as for his questions, so do we have any ideas from an Acme server or other automated process? So both of you both of us would say this is kind of out of our wheelhouse. Although if there was going to fall in one of our wheelhouses, it's in yours more than mine because you deal with this on an enterprise level, don't you?
I do. So generally speaking, though, clients are not having me consult on directory services as a general rule. I've done it a handful of times since I've been at Red Hat.
So if you actually set, not exactly what he's doing, but you in the past had you had set up a LDAP server for kind of a cool authentication thing. Tell me about that.
So it's in a parallel to what Randy has been asking. So Randy wants to know, can the LDAP server essentially hand out PKI certificates or other things? The answer to that is yes. What I have done in the past is actually used LDAP to store an SSH key. And what that means is if I've got that Kerberos ticket and I'm authenticated and the server you are trying to connect to has the connection to LDAP, it will go retrieve your objects out of LDAP, and if the SSH key is part of it, it'll just let you in because it's configured to trust that SSH key. So you can absolutely store PKI certificates inside of LDAP. I don't have any experience doing this, but I know because you can do it with SSH keys, and I have linked to kind of a walkthrough where they do this. It seemed legit. Like, as I haven't done this myself, I can't say, yep, this works 100%, but as I have worked with LDAP, I looked through it and it looked like it was on the level. So we'll link you the guide that I found for using LDAP with PKI.
So as for automating Acme protocols, this is something you have some experience insofar as you actually tried to do this and then ran into a blocker with your domain registrar.
Yeah, so a lot of domain registrars, although not all of them, much to my chagrin, support the Acme protocol, which is just a way to go and get your certificate. In my case, I was trying to use Let's Encrypt. My domain registrar does not support this. And so instead, I essentially use their API to make my own automated certificate management thing. So I used Ansible to do that, and there isn't much more to say other than I essentially worked with my registrar's API and did the thing. I'm using DNS challenge, so it goes and creates a DNS entry, and then it goes and validates that the new DNS entry has been accepted and propagated. There's the word I was looking for. Because if you do the DNS challenge manually, what happens is it'll give you like a string and then says, oh, go put this under, and it gives you the DNS entry that it wants you to put, and then it gives you a string, and then you wait until that has propagated. And once it's propagated, you hit enter and say, yep, go ahead and try. And then the challenge will then go check the DNS entry. And if you have put the string there, it will issue the certificates to you. So I basically just automated that part.
So a couple of things that might be of help to you. I'm sorry, Randy, that we're not going to be able to give you a complete answer, but the good news about writing into the show and allowing us to explore your question is, even if we don't know the answer, there is likely some nerd on the internet that is sitting in front of his computer or driving in his car right now, or her, and she or he is listening and saying to themselves, I know how to do this. I've done this many times. And they're frantically typing the answer as we speak. And so what will happen is, a week from now, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, a month from now, 3 months from now, at some point, the answer will likely land on our doorstep. And when it does, we'll be sure to share it with you. Here's what I can tell you as we sit here today. Your first question, insofar as do you want a free top-level domain? I would recommend you check out .tk, D-O-T, and then a period, TK. TK is a top-level domain registrar specifically for people that want a free domain So where you would ordinarily get like noac.us or noachalaya.com, I could get noac.tk or noachalaya.tk. Once you have a domain, then you can point it to whatever DNS provider you like to include someplace like Cloudflare. And then that would empower you to do some of the automation that you're looking to do. I also found, although I haven't used it, an Ansible collection that is specific for Acme certificates. So we'll have both of those for you in the show notes at podcast.asknoahshow.com. You can check them out and let us know if it helps. Jeremy writes in and says, hi, Noah and Steve. I'm wondering how to effectively manage book content via self-hosting. My history has been using Kindles for ebooks, but I've been learning about the very many other options for e-ink readers and tablets on the market. How should I manage my own media at home? Should I opt for an Android e-ink tablet like those from, and I don't recognize this company, but is it Boaks? And so, Steve, what is your experience with ebook readers? Do you like them? Do you like reading ebooks?
I used to back in the day. I really liked the e-ink form. But in general, I don't like reading on screens. So I used to do this, and then I discovered audiobooks, and I haven't looked back. When I was doing this, I was using Calibra Web or just Calibra, depending on whether I needed to centralize it, which is just a really easy way to manage your ebooks in kind of a centralized fashion. I'm sure there are others, but this is the one that I'm most familiar with, and it's still going strong as far as I know.
So Calibra is essentially an ebook manager. It's an open source piece of software. It's been around for a long time. And Nola's with us in the chat room, and he says it's pronounced books. Well, that makes a lot of sense because Boox. Come on, Noah. So yeah, we'd recommend Calibra. Check it out. Here's something else, and we debated on how much time to spend on this on the show, so we'll keep it a little brief. But I wish when I was getting into ebooks, somebody had talked to me about audiobooks and explained the benefits of them. And from my perspective, I can do other things while I'm listening to audiobooks. I can't really do stuff while I'm sitting reading ebooks. And so for that perspective, I have moved almost entirely away from ebooks. The notable exception, Steve, manuals and documentation. If there was one tip I could give somebody that is starting new out in their career, when you install a device, when you put a new product in, when you install a piece of software, take the PDF manual that you certainly got on a CD from a website, downloaded from a link, however it came, if the only documentation comes in paper form, scan it, and put that into a folder with the manufacturer. So company and then the product name. And man, oh man, has it been helpful to have all that documentation in one little master set of folders. And so when I'm like, what's the default IP address of this thing? Or what's the default username and password of that thing? It's all there in the folder. And I've had this dream, although I've never really executed on it, of someday getting some sort of an e-ink something or other tablet that just is there specifically for documentation. So even if I don't have my laptop, or even if the battery's dead, or even if I'm doing something else, I could reference the documentation. The fall down every time I've tried to implement that has been that it changes. It's constantly needing to get updated. And so there's different versions of software, so it changes. And so how to keep that up to date has been somewhat of a challenge. But that's the role that ebooks play in my life. And I know you have almost exclusively shifted to audio bookshelf, yeah?
I have, but I'd like to make a sideways recommendation. So I set my dad up with Paperless, and that has been a wonderful thing for him in terms of being able to manage, like you talked about, scanning your manuals and all of that sort of stuff, but you can also upload PDFs and all that sort of stuff. And it's a great management tool for that sort of thing. To include, you can keep multiple versions of the same thing. And it would also, because it's got both an Android app and a web front end, you could have it wherever it was instead of on the device where the manual died.
Huh. Interesting.
It does all kinds of like tag and OCR and all the fancy things. It's pretty good. I'm not a big fan of the aesthetic, but you know what? I'm function over form every day, and it definitely does the thing.
Interesting. Oh man, every time we talk about this, I feel like I gotta make an appointment with Paperless. Check it out. Peter writes in and says, "Hi, Noah and Steve. Happy New Year to both of you and all of your listeners. Recently, Steve was talking about his Christmas tree and light effects based on music. Steve was talking about that he invests a lot of time in getting the songs set up in a way so he can match the sound with the lights. I have an idea that could make it much easier for almost any song Christmas tree compatible. There's a very cool open source karaoke software called Ultrastar Deluxe, which I think is an absolute insider tip. Here's why I'm mentioning the software. The basis of the song is that you can sing as a karaoke song with Ultrastar Deluxe in a folder containing a text file. The text file contains information about the music, an MP3, and an optional video are located. The rest of the file contains the lyrics synchronized exactly to the music. I think Steve could use the latter to achieve the light song synchronization. It might be enough for him to use the information to convert it to his previous format, but I don't know. There is a website called, and then he links to the website, where you can register for free and download the corresponding song information. Of course, for copyright reasons, the song and videos are not provided, but there's text files containing the song information that include references via YouTube. And corresponding song and video can be found. With this information, you can manually download the song that matches to the corresponding text file with YTDLP. But it gets better. Because there is USDB Sync, and then he links to that, there is a small graphical program that allows you to search for, select, and download songs via a GUI after logging in to this site. Tools such as YTDLP then take over the automated downloading of all the files for the song and video. My email might be helpful to Steve's Christmas tree, but in any case, it's a good pick for karaoke software that you can use to have a great evenings with friends or family. Ultrastar Deluxe basically has an open source version of the PlayStation game SingStars. For those who are not familiar with Ultrastar Deluxe or SingStars, what makes this kind of karaoke special is that the original music video plays in the background. The notes to be sung are displayed relative to their pitch. The lyrics are displayed with the song notes, and when you hit the notes, it's indicated with it graphically, and everything is scored by awarding points. Thanks for a great show. Kind regards, Peter, longtime listener from Bavaria. So let's start here and celebrate the win. This is an awesome piece of software and something that absolutely fills a niche I've been looking for a long time. I can't believe I was not aware of this. So back in college, I used to DJ weddings. I would do fraternity parties. If there was events, we did a lot of that. And something I've always wanted to do, there were three aspects: DJ, and so doing the lights and sound, photo booths, and but the one aspect I've always wanted to dip into, but there was never, that I knew of, an open source way to do this, was karaoke. And the thing that appeals to me about karaoke, if you and I, whoever you are, even if we've never met, and even if we don't have any other overlapping interests, put us into a room together and give me something to eat or give me something to drink and set karaoke in front of us, I can find a song that I can share with you. You can find a song that you can share with me. And God knows I am not a gifted singer. Whether you are or not, we can do that together. And either it will be astonishing at how good somebody is, or it will be funny at how terrible somebody is. Either way, it's a fun opportunity to have a shared experience. And every study that we have available to us shows when you have shared experiences with other people, it does a couple of things. The first thing it does, it actually drags out life. If you measure, by comparison, if you measure the amount of time that somebody feels like has passed when they're in some sort of repetitive thing like jail, time passes much quicker for them. When you have shared experiences, time slows down. And so if you've ever had an experience where you left for a family vacation on like a Thursday and you get back on Wednesday and it feels like you've been gone for months, because it was just jam-packed with Friday we did this and Saturday we did that and Sunday we did this and Monday. All of those shared experiences and all those unique experiences actually cause you to feel like you're living life longer than time has actually passed. And so there's all manner of benefit to doing stuff like this. And so I'm deeply grateful, Peter, for you for sharing this stuff. It's absolutely something I'm going to check out. It's absolutely something I'm going to play with. And again, you'll notice some themes that come up in the show and kind of replay themselves. I fell down the rabbit hole deep when it comes to things like music production. And so it just so happens I have a computer full of MIDI files that I've been playing with and have been experimenting with and playing with VSTs and all the rest of it. And I found that I can drop those MIDI files right into Ultrastar and play the song. So the same songs that I'm in the process of producing with open source software, I'll be able to play and have lyrics come up. And so from that perspective, this is a massive win, and we're deeply grateful for you sharing it with us and everybody else. Now, I'm not sure this scratches Steve's itch. Steve, can you give us a brief recap for somebody that wasn't familiar with the Christmas tree lights, what that project is, how it came to be, and if this is a viable solution for you?
So essentially what I'm doing is I have individual addressable LEDs and then some traditional lights. And essentially I'm using a Python interface connected to some GPIO pins in order to control the color of the lights and the effects and whether power is going on and off to the tree. because of that, and it's all headless, right? It sits in a nice wooden box that kind of looks like a present that sits under the tree. And because of that, I don't think that this would be what I'm looking for, because ultimately I don't know how this would help me time, like to synchronize the lights to the song when I'm dealing with different types of effects, because I'm not clear as to how it would actually even interface with any lights or anything like that.
This doesn't really, well, first of all, your project it's handwritten, right? So interfacing with anything whatsoever would require more manual intervention. The second part is, well, this would absolutely sync lyrics and such up. You would need to set up individual addressable LED lights to sync music.
Yeah, and that's ultimately the types of lights that I have, and I probably would have to do a lot of reverse engineering to figure out how to make this interface with what I'm doing. This is essentially, it's all timing. It's using a lot of pauses and times and things of that nature. There's a lot of functions that are written specifically to have effects take a specific amount of time or do a specific thing in a short period of time and stuff like that. And so there would be a lot of work in order to get those two things to integrate properly.
If you told me you were starting from scratch, like if God forbid your house burned down and you had, let's just say for the sake of argument, you had no backups of any of the stuff and you were starting from scratch, I might encourage you to go the DMX route, just because there's existing tooling for things like, hey, it's this time and then this split of this time or whatever, and then you can duplicate things. So once you do the chorus one time, as long as the chorus is the same each time, you can put the start part of the chorus and then all the rest of the sequence would line back up. So I think you could potentially save some time that way. Again, assuming that you were starting from scratch. But past that, and then that would be a tool that would be design, DMX stuff would be specifically designed for syncing music to lights. But short of starting all over, I don't know. I think the fundamental problem that doesn't really have a better solution is, at some point, one way or another, no matter which way you slice it, no matter what you're using, no matter what protocol, no matter what software, in the end, there's no getting around. You have a song and there's only one way to sit and figure out, at this specific time, I need this specific sequence to happen. Now, you can do that however you want, but short of sitting down and listening to the song and marking the time and then doing it, if you want the entire thing to run automatically, which you do, I don't know that there's a shortcut here. I think this is just one of those things you kind of got to grind out.
I think so. Like there's also projects like WLED and stuff like that. And there's a bunch of additional projects that go along with that are largely targeted at the outside of your house. And that may be a thing. I looked at that, but I didn't find that to be any less work for the tree than what I'm currently doing. And so maybe it's been a couple of years and it could have come a long ways. So, I mean, there are things out there, but I'm kind of down my path at this point.
From the Linux Newswire newsroom, this is the Week in Review with JT.
For the week of January 18th, 2026, here's the Linux and open source news. Firefox and Thunderbird versions 147 are out. Grub 2.14 has been released. GNOME 49.3 is now available. And Wine 11 has also been released. In distro news, Q4OS 6.5 is now available. Endeavor OS's latest release, Ganymede Neo, is out. Tails 7.4 has been released. Linux Mint 22.3, codenamed Xena, is now available. In open source hardware news, the $99 Beagle Play board has achieved 100% open source with upstream PowerVR graphics. StackChan is a cute community-built open source AI desktop robot. And Mentra's first smart glasses are open source and come with their own app store. In open source security news, researchers have discovered VoidLink, an advanced malware framework made up of custom loaders, implants, rootkits, and modular plugins designed to maintain long-term access to Linux systems. The framework includes multiple cloud-focused capabilities and modules, and is engineered to operate reliably in cloud and container environments over extended periods. In open source AI news, MIT researchers have released Boltz 1, an open source alternative to AlphaFold 3. And to wrap up, in other random Linux and open source news, Adobe Photoshop can now be installed on Linux. Open source MySQL repository has had no commits in more than 3 months, causing concern. Recent inquiry from the Senate Intelligence Committee chair puts the spotlight on security concerns around open source software. And the EU calls for input on open source as it looks towards tech sovereignty.
Manage your server from the web interface and really from your phone. This is something that you're going to hear more of, not less of. Now, there are the curmudgeons among us. I am one of them. I admit it. I believe that work is done from a terminal. It doesn't scare me. It doesn't intimidate me. I find it to be more efficient. I think it's what separates okay, all right. But the reality is, today's modern system administrator, the 19, 20, 21-year-olds that are coming up and are doing this kind of thing, are increasingly reaching for their smartphone as they want to administrate servers. And there are companies that are well aware that this is the direction that we're going. And so to a degree, we as technical stewards have a certain responsibility to make sure that that we lower the friction for people who want to use the things that we put in place and leave behind. And so, like it, dislike it, or otherwise, if you're going between one IT company and another IT company, one system administrator from the other system administrator, if there is a command line only version of a thing, it means that you have to be versed in that command line syntax. Whereas a web UI or a graphical UI means that the interaction with that system, whatever it is explorable and it's shareable. I load it, and even if I don't know what I'm looking for, I can click around until I figure it out. And there's a benefit to that. So right from our very own Q5sys comes WebZFS. It's a modern web-based interface for managing ZFS pools, dataset snapshots, and smart disk management, all built on top of Python, FastAPI, and HTMX. Quote, "My primary focus was to design a transparent user interface that interfaces with the system and doesn't rely on its own database, data collection, tooling, or custom tooling to interact with the operating system. While it's not the best for everybody, what I wanted was something that just has a UI front end for the tooling that I would normally use to interact with on the CLI. So I decided to use ASGI Python to build out a code and use it to run on the same tooling as I would use as a sysadmin. These tools already exist and work, so I didn't see any reason for me to reinvent the wheel. Just so that you know, you cannot delete pools or datasets from the UI. You'll need to do that from the CLI. This was an intentional design choice." So, Steve, we'll circle back to your particular use case or whether it scratches an itch for you or not, but what do you think about the general idea of exposing ZFS as a web interface?
I think that in general, it probably opens up a lot in terms of the way that people are looking for an easy onboarding, and a web UI definitely provides that. I mean, if you think about Webmin and all of the similar tools that have been around for 2-3 decades, however long, that shows you that there's always been a demand to have kind of an easy onboarding to expose things where people don't want to remember commands, because I don't need to remember what the command is that shows me the pools, because I don't need to do that very often, but it sure is nice to have that in a nice little web UI.
So we have a web UI for ZFS. We can manage pool management. We can create, import, export, scrub, monitor ZFS pools. You can rename, mount, unmount datasets and volumes. You can manage snapshots. You can manage replication. There's also a native Sanoid Syncoid integration. We'll come back to that in a second. Performance monitoring, system observability for pool history, kernel logs, parameters, those sorts of things. It has smart monitoring for disk health, attributes, test scheduling, and error logs, fleet monitoring to monitor multiple remote ZFS servers. And it's all built with Tailwind, CSS, and HTMX, making it for a really slick, intuitive, very inviting UI. They also have a user management which relies on PAM to interact with the existing local Nix accounts. But the design parts of this that I think are excellent is that he worked with what the system does naturally, which is, I think, something that we all too often overlook, overmiss, or don't put enough emphasis on, right? We all think that we've got a better way to do it. And the problem with that is something changes underneath the hood and all of a sudden everything else breaks. He didn't do that here. What he chose to do was say, we already have reliable tools to manage these things. Let's just make buttons for them that you can click on in a web UI, which I think is absolutely brilliant. So this is absolutely a project I'm going to play with. It's absolutely something I'm going to deploy. It's absolutely something that I think has a tremendous amount of value. And I would encourage you in the strongest possible terms to go to github.com/webzfs/webzfs and check it out for yourself. Now, Steve, if I came to you and I hired you as an architect and I said, Steve, I've got a RHEL deployment and I've got servers and I'm running virtual machines and I'm running all of these various different things and I'm looking for a way to manage my servers via a web UI, what direction would you steer me?
So I generally really like Cockpit. It works cross distro. I have it running on my Ubuntu machines. I've got it running on my RHEL machines and even my Arch machines. I find that Cockpit is for me the preferred interface, even though I very much like the web ZFS UI aesthetics. I like them a lot. I think that they're very well done from what I've seen. It wouldn't fit in with that aesthetic, and Cockpit is very boring, right? Relative to this UI that we're looking at here, Cockpit is very slow and steady. It's not flashy. In fact, you could argue that it's got quite a bit of room for improvement. But at the end of the day, I want to click a few buttons and get out of it instead of staring at a piece of art. And so that did not come out right. Let me back that up. That was not a shot at the web ZFS stuff at all. It
didn't come across like that. Which in some ways it's a compliment. You're saying it's a really, really nice, well-designed web UI that isn't necessarily what people are looking for when they're trying to roll out large-scale deployments of administration. They're looking for consistency.
They are looking for consistency. Now, if we could get the beauty with the consistency, that's a different thing, right? But we're really looking for functionality, and when the functionality can integrate with something that I'm already using, I'm all for it.
So what would it take to take something like this and make it into a Cockpit module?
I honestly don't know. I haven't looked at this, and I've never built a Cockpit module. I would imagine that Cockpit is largely Python-based because that tends to be a thing that we do at Red Hat, but I don't know. That's a good question.
If there was an opportunity for you to do so, would you ever be open to looking at this project and seeing if there's a way to implement it via a Cockpit module?
Yeah, if I had some time, I'd toss it on the stack of all the other things that I'd like to get to in my spare time.
Right, with all your spare time. No, absolutely. Yeah. Do you think this is just for the enthusiast, or you think this has some potential enterprise value?
I could see that this would be useful for businesses that have this. So I don't run into a ton of businesses that the storage personnel would need something like this, right? If you're running ZFS and you're a client of mine, you have a storage team. That's just kind of the realm that I've worked myself into. I could see this being useful for small, medium businesses for sure, where you've got a couple of people or a handful of people doing multiple related jobs. I could see this being a good, useful tool.
I'd be interested in your thoughts if you would use this, if you have used this, if you check this project out. Let us know what you think by writing to live@asknoahshow.com. And maybe you can, like I say, I get it. We've all got 14 things to do, and we all only get the same 24 hours in a day. But should you find yourself with a little extra time, maybe you could look into what that would take to get that moved into a Cockpit module. And if that's viable, man, that's being able to manage ZFS from Cockpit. Oh, that's like a dream come true for me. Expressive Systems has announced the new ESP32-E22, its first Wi-Fi 6E connectivity coprocessor, and the starting point for a new product line targeting higher performance wireless design. The company positions the device as a radio coprocessor that offloads Wi-Fi and Bluetooth networking functions from a host processor, allowing the host to focus on the application level tasks. The ESP32-E22 integrates tri-band Wi-Fi 6E support across 2.4 GHz and 5 GHz and 6 GHz marking the expressive first product to enable operation in the 6 gigahertz spectrum. So, Steve, for somebody who's never heard of one before, what is an ESP32?
It's a system on a chip, or a very tiny computer that can run a very stripped down version, usually of like Tasmota or a ESP Home or some other operating system. You can even write C++ code directly to them. And they're generally used for interacting with various sensors or related things for turning on and off relays or those sorts of tasks.
Why do you like them so much? I know you have purchased a lot of ESP32s and they're all over your house. What do you do with them?
I use them so ESP32s in particular, I use them for like Bluetooth proxies, or I use them for temperature gathering. I use them for out in the chicken coop. I use it for raising and lowering the linear actuator, which controls opening and closing the chicken coop door. All over the place. I do lots of mostly temperature if I start to think about it, but I do other things. Oh, and I freed my Logitech speakers by writing code for ESP Home that allows me to control my Logitech speakers from ESP Home. So there's that.
Because previously it required some very proprietary special remote.
Yeah, it's like this little puck thing, and they don't even sell them optionally. So if you ever lost or broke it, there is no way to control the speakers.
What do you notice about the new ESP32? Is it of a desire to you? Do you read that and you hear about the new 6 gigahertz band and think, man, that would be really great. I could really think of some ways, or I have some connectivity problems, or that really solves an issue. Or is it just, it's the next round of a very excellent product. You liked them before, you continue to like them, that sort of thing?
I think that it'll make the original ESP32s cheaper, which is, I'm all for that because they're currently doing what I want. I would be interested in any time that you get a rev on the Bluetooth spectrum. That is of interest to me. I'm not particularly fussed about more bandwidth, because the types of things that I do with them, man, these things could go over like wireless A as far as I care, because they're not sending tons of data. Pardon me, and they don't even have to be very quick, right? So I'm not really fussed about the additional speed because I'm not doing anything that needs that.
If somebody had never used an ESP32 before, what is kind of the way to get started? You mentioned WLED earlier in the program. That is, so far as I recall, runs on ESP32s too, doesn't it?
It does. Yep.
Where is a good place to get started, or what are some simple entry level projects to start with an ESP32?
That's a good question. They're all over the gambit, and I would say that most of the time people are using them to gather data from sensors as the entryway, and then you get more and more complex as you go along. So I would say the easiest would be either looking at Tasmota or ESP Home. Those are very well supported paths, and just take a look to see what they can do. But largely it's about gathering data from sensors.
You can check it out. We'll have a link to Linux Gizmos at podcast.asknoahshow.com. Big Tech's AI-fueled memory shortage is set to be the PC industry's defining story for 2026 and beyond. Standalone direct-to-consumer RAM kits were some of the most first products to feel the bite of the prices, spiking 300 to 400% by the end of 2025. Prices for SSDs have also increased noticeably, albeit more modestly. The rest of 2026 is all going to be about where, how, and to what extent those price spikes flow downstream into computers, phones, and other components, and RAM and NAND chips where used in the supply of the product's longer-term supply contracts negotiated by big companies have helped keep prices from surging too noticeably so far. So here's the thing. The 2.5-inch Samsung Pro drives, out of stock everywhere. Can't find them anywhere. I saw that, is it Micron? Yep. So there's all these companies they're making changes in response to this AI thing. If you were to dumb it down for me like I was 5, what is happening right now? Why are all the prices of these things getting to be so expensive?
The AI conglomerates are making big deals behind the scenes for buying capacity for these RAM chips, particularly GPU, but also kind of splashing down to everything else. So when you're chewing up capacity in the fabs for making the RAM for the GPUs, which is largely what the AI cares about, it means there's less capacity for everything else. And those AI machines still need traditional RAM as well. And so all of that is contributing. When you have a player coming up and be like, I want to buy your capacity, here's $100 million for the next 3 months of it, and you've got 4 or 5 of them, and you've got little old Steven saying, please, sir, can I have 16 gigs of RAM for less than $300? They're just going to be like, yeah, we'll put that on the back queue.
So this problem is going to get worse in 2026, not better, isn't it?
That analysts are saying that this is going to run through 2027 because what happened we actually can blame Bitcoin for this. What happened was the last time we saw a big crunch on manufacturing was during Bitcoin in general. And what they did at the time was they ramped up production because they thought this was going to be like a long-term demand. And what actually ended up happening was once they got through the glut of the Bitcoin demand, they had a bunch of spare capacity, which caused them to have to drop the prices again. And so this time they're saying, no, we're not going to, we're predicting the same sort of thing where you're going to have a glut of demand and then it's going to fall off a cliff again. And so we're not going to do the same thing where we expand our manufacturing capacity. We're just going to make everybody kind of tough it out for a couple of years.
It's not good news, Steve. Are you making any preparations in your house by way of, I know you like to keep some drives on hand. I know that you were just either have just or are just completing some PC builds. Is that affecting the way that you're approaching this stuff? Are you stocking up on anything?
I got under the wire for most of the stuff. So I bought 16 gigs of RAM, 2 16 gig sticks for $100 each. And I thought that was kind of steep. And then a month later, they were $230 for the exact same 16 gig stick. And they're even higher now. So I got in not as well as if I had started in August, let me tell you. That would have been something else. I don't buy a ton of like NVMEs to store on the shelf because I consume largely spinning disks because I need the extra space. And so they haven't gone up as crazy. They're going up, and I'm going to pick up 1 or 2, I think, because I've had some drives die, but I think I'm okay. What about you?
I am in desperate need of drives. I need to expand my personal file server, and I was going to do it on Black Friday, and essentially what stopped me was I didn't really feel like I saw any deals worth really snatching up, and so I kind of held off, but reading this, and in part to fight depression, and in part because it's something that I've been putting off, I think I'm going to have to just pull the trigger and upgrade the pool in my house.
Yeah, especially if you're doing spinning disk, it's going to hurt, but it's not going to hurt nearly as bad as if you were trying to do high capacity NVMEs or SSDs.
Yeah. Yeah, and unfortunately, that's where most of the stuff is, in the rest of the industry. And we do a lot with used machines and putting them back together and beefing them back up. And so I think all this is going to affect us pretty drastically. Hey, the music in our ears, it means we're out of time. I thank you for joining us. We record the show every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central. You can join us by going to AskNoahShow.com. Can't make it live? That's okay. We release it as a podcast. Podcast.asknoahshow.com. There you'll find all of the articles and resources we use to put the show together, as well as the entire catalog all the way back to episode 1. If you want the latest, follow him on X. He's at Linux Ovens. I'm at Kernel Linux. Follow me, noahc.us. We're back next week, 6 p.m. Tuesday. AskNoahShow.com.